The Ugly Duckling. It was a lovely warm summer. On a sunny hill stretched an old farm, surrounded by deep pools of water. From the farm to the water's edge grew dense burdock leaves, and there, in a snug thicket, sat a duck on her nest. Eagerly waiting for her ducklings to hatch, she was growing quite restless. She had been waiting a long time. Finally, the eggshells began to crack. Peep, peep, came a cry from inside. The egg yolks came to life, and funny little beaks popped out of the shells. Quick, quick, quacked the mother duck, and the ducklings clambered to climb out. As soon as they were out, the ducklings began looking about them on every side at the large green burdock leaves.
How big the world is,
said the young ducks. Of course, there was much more room here than in the cramped shell.
Do you imagine this is the whole world?
The mother duck smiled.
No, it stretches far beyond into the distance.
Well, are you all out? She rose a bit. No, not all. The largest egg is still there, and she settled herself again. At last, the largest egg broke.
Beep, beep, beep,
and a huge ugly duckling fell out. The mother duck stared at it. It's very large, she thought, and not like all the others. I wonder if it's really a turkey. No, it can't be. We'll see how he swims tomorrow. The next day, the weather was wonderful. The mother duck took her ducklings to the water. The mother duck jumped in with a splash. "Follow me, kids," she called to her brood, and one after another the little ducklings jumped in. At first, the water closed over their heads, but they came up again in an instant and quickly swam to their mom. And the ugly grey duckling was keeping up with the others. He's not a turkey. Just look at how well he uses his legs and how upright he holds himself. No, he's my own child. And he's not so ugly after all, if you look at him properly, said the mother duck to herself. The mother duck and her ducklings clambered onto the shore, and she said, "Everyone, come with me now. I will introduce you to the farmyard. But you must keep close to me, or someone might step on you. And beware of the cats." Soon they reached the farmyard. There was an awful ruckus. Someone was singing, others were fighting, and everyone was talking very loudly. "Come now, use your legs," said the mother duck to the ducklings. "Quack and bow your heads to that old duck over there. She's the highest born here. Like this, bend your neck and say, quack." The ducklings did as they were told, but the other ducks stared and said loudly, "Another new brood? As if there weren't enough of us already.
And one of them is so ugly.
Well, we certainly don't want him here." And then one duck flew up and pecked him. "Let him alone," said the mother duck. "He isn't doing you any harm." "Yes, but he's so big and weird," replied the other duck.
"Pretty chicks you have there,"
said the oldest duck.
"They're all very cute, except for one. This one didn't turn out well. Would be good to redo him a little."
"He's not pretty, but he has a kind heart, and he swims better than the others," said the mother duck. "I think he will grow up pretty, and perhaps be smaller." The mother duck and her ducklings made a home for themselves on the farmyard, and all would have been well. But the poor ugly duckling who had crept out of his shell last of all was bullied, pushed around and made fun of by everyone, all the ducks and the chickens. "He's so ugly," they said. The poor little thing didn't know what to do, where to go. Why was he born so ugly that the whole farmyard laughed at him? The poor duckling was pushed and driven away by everyone. Even his brothers and sisters said to him angrily,
"Ah, you ugly thing, I wish the cat would get you."
The ducks pinched him, the chickens pecked him, and the girl who fed the birds kicked him with her feet. Kids, do you remember what plant grew in the thicket where the duck hatched her nestlings? Cabbage, vines, or burdock? That's right, it was a thicket of burdock. So at last he could take no more. He ran across the yard and squeezed through the palings. Frightened little birds fluttered out of the bushes.
"They're afraid of me because I'm so ugly,"
thought the duckling, closed his eyes and started running, with no idea where he was going. He ran and ran until he came to a moor where wild ducks lived. Tired and sad, he sat there the whole night. In the morning, the ducks flew out of their nests and saw the new settler. "Who are you?" they asked. But the duckling just shuffled nervously and bowed from side to side as best he could. "You're very ugly," said the wild ducks. "But we don't care, as long as you don't want to marry one of our family." Poor thing. He was just grateful for the chance to sit in the rushes and drink some of the water in the moor. He spent 2 days on the moor, and on the 3rd day, 2 wild goslings appeared. They had not been out of the egg long, and were thus very cheeky.
"Listen, buddy,"
they said.
"you're such a freak that we kind of even like you. Do you wanna fly with us and be a bird of passage?"
Suddenly, shots rang out over the moor. Pop, pop! A whole flock of geese rose up from the rushes, and the goslings rushed off into them as fast as they could. Pop, pop! Gunshots sounded again. A shooting frenzy began. Hunters surrounded the moor from all sides. The blue smoke from the guns rose like clouds over the trees and floated away across the water. Hunting dogs raced around the moor. Splash, splash! The rushes swayed from side to side. The poor duckling was paralyzed with fear. Suddenly, a hunting dog appeared in front of him. Its tongue hung from its mouth and its eyes glared fearfully. It thrust its nose to the duckling, showed its sharp teeth, and ran on.
"Thank God,"
the duckling breathed a sigh of relief.
"I'm so ugly that even the dog will not bite me."
And he lay still in the rushes. Bullets kept flying over his head and gunshots kept ringing. It was late in the day before things quieted down, but even then, the poor thing didn't dare move. Several more hours passed before he dared to stand up, looked around, and rushed away from the moor. He passed the summer this way, hiding out in the forest, crossing between marshes and lakes where he could swim and dive. But all the animals and birds continued to avoid him for being so ugly. Autumn came. The leaves in the forest turned golden and brown. The wind caught them as they fell and whirled them in the air. And up in the sky it grew so cold that heavy clouds brought hail and snow. Things got tough for the poor little duckling. He couldn't always find a safe place to spend the night, and he often went hungry. One evening, just as the sun was setting beautifully over the horizon, he saw a whole flock of beautiful large birds rise up over the lake. The duckling had never before seen such beautiful creatures. They were white as snow, with long, graceful necks. They were swans. They uttered an unusual cry, spread their magnificent large wings, and flew away from the cold meadows to warmer countries across the blue seas. The poor duckling felt a strange excitement. He didn't know the names of these birds, where they were going, but he fell in love with them as he had never loved anyone before. Poor ugly duckling. A bone-chilling winter arrived. The duckling had to swim without rest to keep the water from freezing completely. But the ice-free space grew smaller and smaller. The duckling paddled with his legs as fast as he could, but one day he grew completely exhausted, stopped, and froze over. He barely managed to get out of the lake and hid under the roots of a big tree which was growing nearby. It would be too sad to relate all the duckling's misfortunes that harsh winter. When the sun once again warmed the earth with its gentle rays, he could swim in the lake again and hide in the rushes. The larks began singing. Spring came. The duckling flapped his wings and suddenly flew. Now his wings rustled and were much stronger than before. Before he knew it, he found himself in a large garden. The apple trees were all in bloom. The fragrant lilac tree bent its long green branches over the winding stream. Oh, how lovely it was here. How it smelled of spring. Suddenly, 3 beautiful white swans swam out of the rushes. They swam so lightly and smoothly, as if they were gliding through the water. The duckling remembered the beautiful birds, and he felt a strange sadness.
I will swim up to these royal birds. They will probably send me away because I, being so ugly, dare to approach them, but it doesn't matter.
And he swam towards the beautiful swans, who, seeing him, also rushed to him.
No. Don't send me away,
said the ugly duckling and bent down his head. But what did he see in the crystal clear water? His own image. And he was no longer an ugly, dark grey bird, but a beautiful swan. To be born in a duck's nest is of no consequence if you hatched from a swan's egg. Now he was glad that he suffered so much sorrow and pain, because it made him better appreciate his happiness and all the splendor around him. The great swans swam around him and stroked him with their beaks. Small children came running into the garden. They started throwing breadcrumbs and grains to the swans. And the smallest child shouted,
"A new swan! A new swan!"
And all the others joined in.
Yes, a new swan, and he is the most beautiful of all. So young and pretty.
And the old swans bowed their heads before him. He felt quite ashamed and hid his head under his wing, not knowing why. Our beautiful swan was happy, but he was not at all proud. A kind heart knows no pride. Remembering the time when everyone despised him and drove him away. And now everyone said that he was the most beautiful among the most beautiful birds. And a joyful cry burst from the depths of his heart. Could I have dreamed of such happiness while I was an ugly duckling? So always remember, my little friends, you should never judge others just by their appearance. Looks aren't everything. A kind heart and good thoughts are more important. Subscribe to our channel, leave a like, and don't forget to share our fairy tales with your friends.